The champagne glass shattered against my temple at exactly 7:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I remember the time because the antique grandfather clock in my living room chimed just as the crystal exploded, mixing its elegant melody with my 5-year-old son's horrified scream. Blood dripped down my face, staining the cream-colored cashmere sweater I had bought specifically for this family dinner. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent $400 trying to look presentable enough for my mother-in-law's impossible standards, and now her diamond bracelet, the one my husband had charged to my credit card last month, had sliced a gash above my eyebrow. "You ungrateful little gold digger," my mother-in-law hissed, her perfectly manicured fingers still clenched around the stem of a second glass. "How dare you question where the money went?" My son, Ethan, stood frozen in the doorway, his new Christmas pajamas suddenly looking too bright against the horror unfolding in our kitchen. His favorite stuffed dinosaur dangled from his trembling hand. What my mother-in-law didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been waiting for this moment for exactly 4 months. Every insult, every bruise, every stolen dollar had been documented, recorded, and filed away with my attorney. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They had absolutely no idea that the woman bleeding on the kitchen floor was about to destroy everything they had spent 3 generations building. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand how a successful business owner ended up being treated like a servant in her own home. I met my husband, Derek, at a tech conference in Austin 7 years ago. I was 24, fresh off selling my first app for $2-3 million, feeling invincible in a way that only young money can make you feel. Derek was charming, handsome, and came from what he called old money in Connecticut. His father was a retired federal judge. His mother sat on the boards of 3 major charities. His younger sister, Vanessa, was finishing her residency at Johns Hopkins. The Hartwell family was everything my working-class background wasn't. My mother cleaned houses until her back gave out. My father drove trucks until a heart attack took him when I was 16. I put myself through community college, taught myself to code, and built something from nothing. Derek made me feel like I had finally arrived. Like I belonged in rooms with marble floors and people who summered as a verb. We got married after a year of dating. The wedding cost $180,000. I paid for most of it because Derek's family, despite their old money reputation, seemed perpetually cash-strapped. I didn't mind. I was in love. I thought we were building a life together. The first red flag came 3 months after the wedding, when my mother-in-law, Patricia, asked me for a small loan to cover some unexpected expenses. $50,000. I gave it to her without hesitation. The second red flag was when Derek quit his job at his father's former colleague's law firm because it was too stressful. He said he wanted to focus on his passion project, some vague startup idea that never materialized. I supported us both. I was building my second company, a cybersecurity firm, and the money was good. The third red flag was when Vanessa moved in with us temporarily after finishing her residency. That was 2 years ago. She never left. But the real nightmare began 4 months ago, when my mother-in-law's accountant embezzled $500,000 from the family trust and fled to Costa Rica. Suddenly, the Hartwell family's carefully constructed facade crumbled. They weren't old money. They were old debt. Generations of living beyond their means, propped up by loans and lies. And they looked at me, the girl from nowhere with the self-made millions, like I was their personal ATM. The day after the embezzlement was discovered, Patricia showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and an announcement. "I'll be staying here until we sort out this mess," she said, breezing past me into the foyer. "Derek, help me with my bags." The guest room with the ensuite, not the one near the garage. I looked at my husband, expecting him to say something, anything. He just shrugged and grabbed his mother's Louis Vuitton. "It's just temporary," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. Family helps family. Within a week, my father-in-law, Richard, had also moved in. Then Vanessa's boyfriend, some pharmaceutical sales rep named Brad, who looked at me like I was something stuck to his shoe. Then Vanessa announced she was pregnant and couldn't possibly handle the stress of apartment hunting. By the end of the first month, I was cooking for 7 people every night. By the end of the second month, I had been moved out of the master bedroom because Patricia said her back required the better mattress. By the end of the third month, I was sleeping in the basement on an air mattress while my 5-year-old asked me why Grandma called me bad names. But here's the thing they didn't understand about me. I didn't build a multi-million-dollar company by being stupid. I didn't survive poverty, sexism, and a tech industry that treated women like decorations by being weak. The night Patricia first slapped me, 4 months before the champagne incident, I made a phone call. Not to the police, not to a divorce attorney, to a private investigator named Marcus Chen, who I had worked with when an employee tried to steal proprietary code from my company. I need everything, I told him. Every secret, every lie, every skeleton in every closet. I don't care how deep you have to dig. This is your family you're talking about, Marcus said carefully. No, I replied, touching the welt forming on my cheek. These are the people who married into my family. There's a difference. What Marcus uncovered over the next few months would have been devastating to anyone with a conscience. Fortunately, the Hartwells didn't seem to possess one. Judge Richard Hartwell, the Honorable Patriarch, had been accepting bribes for the last 15 years of his career. Not big, flashy bribes that would attract attention. Small, consistent payments from a network of attorneys who wanted favorable rulings. Marcus found records of offshore accounts, shell companies, and enough evidence to not only destroy Richard's reputation but potentially send him to prison. Patricia, the charity queen, had been skimming from the organizations she supposedly served. For 2 decades, she had funneled donations into her personal accounts, using the money to maintain her lifestyle while actual charitable work went unfunded. Children's hospitals, food banks, homeless shelters, all deprived so Patricia could have her annual trips to Milan. Vanessa, the brilliant doctor everyone admired, had cheated her way through medical school, not just on a few tests, but on her entire board certification. She had paid someone to take her exams, submitted falsified research, and currently practiced medicine with credentials she never actually earned. And Derek, my beloved husband, the man I had supported for 6 years while he found himself. Derek had a second family, a girlfriend in Philadelphia, 2 children, aged 4 and 2. He had been using my money to pay their rent, their car payments, their private school tuition. Every business trip for the past 5 years had been a trip to see them. When Marcus showed me the photos of Derek pushing a stroller through a Philadelphia park, a little girl on his shoulders who looked exactly like Ethan, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took a deep breath and asked Marcus one question. Is this everything? There's more, he said. But this is enough. I want all of it, I told him. Every single piece of evidence. And I want it organized by family member, dated, and backed up in 3 different secure locations. Because I wasn't just going to leave them. I wasn't just going to divorce Derek and walk away with whatever a judge decided was fair. These people had taken my money, my home, my dignity, and my peace of mind. They had made my son watch his mother be treated like garbage. They had made me sleep in my own basement while they plotted ways to take even more. No, I was going to burn their world to the ground and make them watch. The next part of my plan required patience, which is not a virtue anyone associates with revenge. But I knew that if I acted too soon, I would only get partial justice. I needed them comfortable. I needed them to believe they had completely broken me. So I became the perfect victim. I cooked their meals without complaint. I cleaned up after Vanessa's morning sickness, even though watching her carry another man's baby while knowing my husband had 2 children with another woman made me physically ill. I smiled and nodded when Patricia criticized everything from my cooking to my parenting to my unfortunate choice of career. Women shouldn't be in technology, Patricia announced at dinner one night, while eating the meal I had prepared from ingredients I had purchased. It's unnatural. No wonder Derek seeks comfort elsewhere. I didn't react. I just filed the comment away for future reference. The one thing I refused to compromise on was Ethan. Every night, I made sure he knew that our situation was temporary. Every weekend, I took him to my best friend Sarah's house for playdates that were actually overnight stays away from the chaos. Sarah was the only person who knew the truth, and she kept Ethan safe while I played my role at home. Mommy is handling something important, I told him during one of our private moments in the basement, and I need you to be brave for a little while longer. Can you do that for me? Are the mean people going to leave? He asked, his eyes too serious for a 5-year-old. Yes, baby, I promised. And they're never coming back. I also started moving money. Nothing obvious, nothing that would trigger alerts. But over 4 months, I quietly transferred my liquid assets into accounts that Derek's name wasn't on. I funded an irrevocable trust for Ethan that no one could touch. I moved the deed to my business properties into an LLC that I controlled solely. By the time they figured out what I was doing, there would be nothing left for them to steal. The final piece of my plan was the cameras. I had a security company, ones that specialized in domestic situations, install hidden cameras throughout the house. They caught everything. Patricia slapping me, Derek screaming at me about money, Vanessa rifling through my jewelry box, Richard making phone calls to his former colleagues about the good old days of payoffs. I had hours of footage. I had documents. I had testimony from former colleagues, jilted business partners, and, most damaging of all, Derek's Philadelphia girlfriend, who was absolutely furious when Marcus told her that Derek was already married with another child. I was ready. The Christmas Eve incident wasn't random. I had deliberately questioned a suspicious charge on our joint credit card, knowing Patricia would react violently. She had been increasingly aggressive as the holiday approached, frustrated that the money wasn't flowing as freely as she wanted. I needed one more piece of footage, something undeniable, something that would make me the clear victim in any court proceeding. The champagne glass gave me everything I needed. After Patricia hit me, after Ethan screamed, after Derek just stood there watching his mother assault his wife, I did something that surprised everyone. I smiled. "Perfect," I said, wiping the blood from my face. "That's exactly what I needed." The room went silent. Patricia's face shifted from rage to confusion. Derek finally looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time in months. "What did you say?" Patricia demanded. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I said, "That's exactly what I needed. You see, Patricia, I've been recording everything that happens in this house for the past 4 months. Every slap, every insult, every theft. And now I have you, on Christmas Eve, assaulting me in front of my child." "You can't do that," Richard said, his judge voice trying to sound authoritative. "Recording without consent is illegal." "Actually," I replied, still smiling despite the blood running down my face, "this is a one-party consent state. I consented. That's all that's required. But thank you for the legal lesson, Richard. Speaking of legal issues, should we discuss the bribes?" His face went white. I turned to Patricia. "Or maybe we should talk about the $300,000 you've stolen from the Children's Hope Foundation. I hear the board is very interested in conducting an audit." Patricia sat down heavily, her perfect composure cracking. "Vanessa," I continued, "I'm sure the medical board would love to know about your certification fraud. And Brad, did you know your girlfriend isn't actually a licensed physician? That might affect your baby's healthcare options." Vanessa started crying. Brad looked like he wanted to disappear. Finally, I turned to my husband, the man I had loved, the man I had supported, the man who had betrayed me in ways I still couldn't fully process. "And Derek," I said softly, "how are Amanda and the kids? Did you get them presents this year? With my money, of course." Derek's face went through several expressions: shock, denial, fear. Then something ugly settled in his eyes. "You can't prove any of this," he said. "I can prove all of it," I replied. "I have bank records, I have photos, I have testimony. I have Amanda's complete cooperation, by the way. She was very upset to learn about me, about Ethan. She's agreed to testify about everything, from the money you've given her to the things you've told her about your dead wife in Connecticut." "You told her I was dead?" I almost laughed. "That's creative." "This is blackmail," Richard said, trying to regain control. "We'll call the police." "Please do," I said. "I'll wait. In fact, I've already sent copies of all my evidence to the FBI, the State Medical Board, the IRS, and 3 investigative journalists who specialize in public corruption. I sent them 4 hours ago. Time to arrive at midnight. Merry Christmas." The room erupted. Patricia screamed. Richard threatened. Derek tried to grab my phone, but I stepped back easily. "It's already done," I said calmly. "The question now is not whether your lives are going to be destroyed. They are. The question is how much worse you want to make it for yourselves." "What do you want?" Patricia asked, her voice breaking. "What do I want?" I repeated. "That's a good question. I want my dignity back. I want my home back. I want my son to grow up knowing that his mother is not someone who can be walked over. I want every penny you've stolen from me, from those charities, from all the people you've hurt. I want Derek to sign away all parental rights to Ethan before Amanda's children find out they have a brother. And I want all of you out of my house in the next 30 minutes. 30 minutes? Vanessa wailed. It's Christmas Eve. I'm aware, I said. Consider it a lesson in consequences. Richard tried one more time. Be reasonable. We can work something out. I have connections. I can make things difficult for you. I stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the blood still dripping from my wound. Your connections, I said slowly, are currently receiving emails detailing exactly how corrupt you are. By morning, you won't have any connections. By next week, you'll be lucky to have a public defender. So please, Richard, tell me more about making things difficult for me. He had nothing to say. They left in exactly 23 minutes. Patricia had to borrow money from Derek for a hotel, which was satisfying given how much of my money she had already taken. Vanessa called me every name she could think of while Brad loaded their things into his car. Richard didn't say another word. Derek was the last to leave. He stood in the doorway of the house he had contributed nothing to, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I never loved you, he said. You know that, right? It was always about the money. I know, I replied. I figured that out about 4 months ago. The difference is, I also stopped loving you. And unlike you, I'm actually good at strategy. He left. I closed the door. I locked it. Then I slid down to the floor and finally let myself cry. Ethan found me there 20 minutes later, Sarah having brought him home when I texted that it was safe. Are they gone, Mommy? He asked, kneeling beside me. They're gone, baby, I said, pulling him into my arms. They're never coming back. You're bleeding, he said, touching my forehead with his tiny fingers. I know, but I'm okay. We're going to be okay. The aftermath was everything I had hoped for and more. Richard was indicted on 47 counts of corruption 3 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. Former attorneys testified against him. Bank records proved the payments. He took a plea deal to avoid trial and was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. His legacy, 3 generations of legal excellence, ended in disgrace. Patricia faced civil suits from 4 different charitable organizations. The total claims against her exceeded $2 million. She had to sell everything, including the family estate in Connecticut that the Hartwells had owned for 80 years. The house where Derek grew up, where he had promised me we would raise our children someday, was purchased by a tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley who turned it into an Airbnb. Vanessa lost her medical license and faced criminal charges for fraud. The hospital where she worked was horrified to learn that one of their physicians had falsified her credentials. Several malpractice suits followed from patients who questioned whether their care had been compromised. Brad left her before the baby was born. She moved back in with Patricia, both of them crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment in Bridgeport. And Derek? Derek got exactly what he deserved. Amanda, his Philadelphia girlfriend, sued him for fraud and child support arrears. She had been under the impression that Derek was a successful businessman, not an unemployed parasite living off his wife. When she learned the truth, she wanted blood. Our divorce gave me everything: the house, the assets, the business, sole custody of Ethan. Derek was ordered to pay child support to both families, which was difficult given that he had no income and no skills. Last I heard, he was living with a friend in New Jersey, working at a call center, and drinking heavily. I took Ethan to therapy, because despite my best efforts, he had seen too much. The therapist said he was resilient, that children often are, but that he would need support processing what happened. I committed to giving him that support for as long as he needed. I also went to therapy myself, not because I regretted what I did, but because carrying that much anger, that much calculated patience, takes a toll. I needed to learn how to put it down, how to move forward without constantly looking over my shoulder. My company thrived. The publicity from the Hartwell scandal, while uncomfortable, actually increased my profile in the tech industry. People admired how I had handled myself, how I had protected my assets and my child while systematically dismantling those who had tried to destroy me. A year after that Christmas Eve, I sat on the back porch of my house, watching Ethan play with our new puppy in the yard. The basement had been converted into a playroom for him. The master bedroom was mine again. Every trace of the Hartwells had been erased. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my investigator. Patricia filed for bankruptcy today. Thought you'd want to know. I read the message twice, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, victory, closure. What I felt instead was something simpler. Relief. I put the phone down and called out to my son. "Ethan, time for dinner!" He came running, the puppy at his heels, his face bright with the kind of uncomplicated joy that I had almost forgotten existed. "Can we have pizza?" he asked. "We can have whatever you want," I said. Because that's the thing about rebuilding your life. You get to choose what fills it. You get to decide who matters and who doesn't. You get to wake up every morning in a house that belongs to you, with a child who loves you, knowing that the people who tried to break you are now broken themselves. They called me a gold digger. They called me worthless. They thought they could take everything I had built and leave me with nothing. They were wrong. I am not a victim. I have never been a victim. I am a woman who played a longer game than they could imagine, and I won. If you're watching this and you're in a situation that feels hopeless, if someone is treating you like you're less than you are, if you feel trapped by people who should love you but only want to use you, I want you to know something. Silence is not weakness. Patience is not surrender. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is let them think they've won while you prepare to take everything back. Don't get mad. Get evidence. Don't react. Strategize. And when the time is right, when you have everything you need, when they've gotten comfortable enough to show you exactly who they really are, that's when you strike. They'll never see it coming. Trust me, I know. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to Pie Revenge for more stories of people who refuse to stay down. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to play the long game with someone who underestimated you? I want to hear your stories. Until next time, remember, the best revenge isn't just living well. It's making sure they know exactly what they lost.